future trends, deep insights, industry leaders. This is the iGaming Next podcast with your host, Pierre Lindh.
Ozric, can you talk about the end of online poker?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's a well-documented problem that is causing operators a lot of harm at the minute, especially in terms of reputational damage. The forums are full of like angry punters. They're pretty sick of these bots. But I find it quite fascinating from like a mathematical perspective. So, there's a kind of obsession with the gambling world in academia and with mathematicians that use it as a kind of playground. And it's the same for me, in terms of processes. You want to break processes. It's a great place to start. But yeah, obviously in terms of machine learning, poker's kind of been completed in terms of, it started with chess. And that was, seen as a kind of academic achievement in a similar way that, everybody's been trying to break poker, and I think they've done it. So I think it poses a bit of an existential threat to poker. Just because, how do you solve that? The best you can do is do the same, try and identify people that are using these bots. But the issue with that is, the bots only have to, from the opposing side, only have to change slightly in order to, go undetected again. And so all you're doing is diluting the value in which these bots are taking, and it gets to a point where they have a positive margin. Yeah. But there's so many false positives that you can't do anything about it. Players are all trying to play the best strategy. The bots are trying to be a bit, less good. So, they then fall into a bit of a grey area. Yeah. So I've been quite interested in sort of some of the techniques used in gaming. So, that manage bots that are on the using the interface. So, in gaming they use like camera angle changes that mean that if you're using like a bot or an auto clicker, the camera angle change means that what you're intending to click on, you're no longer clicking on. And this is stuff they were doing, a long time ago. So you can use this kind of stuff to, combined with gameplay, to identify people that, have bots that are interacting with the front end. Because you can kind of throw them off and then monitor the gameplay, like move the buttons, so when they don't interact, and maybe, hundreds of players don't interact in that simultaneous moment, you can build a profile. But the problem is they don't need to interact with the front end. You can use two separate devices, and the person can just be taking instructions. You can have like an OCR system that's pulling the cards from the screen without interacting, and then you have a separate system that's giving you, instructions on how to play. So I think there's short-term solutions, there's mid-term solutions, but poker faces an existential threat in that regard. And of course, like land-based poker is fine, because assuming that you can't get cameras in, and
or like like a microphone or
something.
Something like that. It's an interesting problem. I mean, my background, like we spoke about this before here, obviously, and my background is poker, of course, both on the land-based side and the online side, and throughout the years, even since 2005, the bots have always been the discussion. Like, will the bots at some point become better than the humans? And the perception for so long has always been that poker is an unsolvable problem in the AI world. But similarly, that was the discussion around Go, the Asian game as well, that supposedly was unsolvable for AI. And just a couple of years ago, of course, there was an AI system who managed to beat the world's best Go player. And similarly in poker, I think something around 3 to 4 years ago, there was a Finnish AI researcher who basically created this challenge for some of the best poker players in the world. He thought that he had built an AI system that could play perfect poker. And in our day, if you will, there was no such expression as playing perfect poker. We were under the impression that poker is an intuitive game, and depending on who you are playing with, you cannot play perfect. You can just try to do your best under the circumstances, so to say. But it turns out that there is such a thing as playing perfect poker, and it's called GTO, obviously, and that's what all the poker players are trying to achieve. And so the Finnish researcher, he put this test out there, this competition against some of the best poker players in the world, and consistently the AI system won, of course. And now the challenge, I guess, is to get the computational power in order to play perfect poker in real time. So I guess why the online poker world is not seeing this problem today, right, is because the computers are not powerful enough and the systems are not efficient enough to play in real time. So what the poker pros do now is that they analyze their own play after they play. So they analyze, did I play close to GTO or whatnot? But at one point, it's just a matter of time, right, before the systems get powerful enough.
I believe they've already solved kind of two-player poker, the bots, perfectly. I think if there's sufficient table coverage, so obviously with each seat the bot has, the more control they have, the more data they have. So it is sort of, accumulates the knowledge in order to be more effective. I think where it's struggling is, one player in a room of players. But yeah, it's just a matter of time. It's just as soon as the formulas are refined, so that requires less computation or more computations available. So
yeah, and it's literally like from one day to the other, more or less, when this shift might happen. And I would assume that some the larger poker operators obviously are aware of this problem and trying to solve it. But like you said, like how do you solve this problem? Because as you said, like a player can just sit with a second computer next to them who is telling them what is the perfect move. Yeah. And how do you solve it? It seems unsolvable.
I think it is.
Online poker is doomed.
Yeah, if anyone has the answer, it's a very valuable problem to solve.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Yeah, it's an interesting one, and like we said before, I have some of my best friends are professional poker players, and they have always been scared of the day where the bots will play perfect poker, and they are aware as well that this will happen one day or the other.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting. Well, Ozric, I mean, you're representing the Lovelace Consultancy, obviously, and you're an expert in bonus abuse, multi-accounting, and basically how to exploit online casinos. And previously you come from the background, obviously, exploiting casinos yourself, and then obviously before turning white hat exploiter, if you will, and now working with the gambling industry in order to make sure that their casinos are not exploitable in the games. So I'm really curious just to start from the beginning. It's like can you tell us like the story of how you got into exploiting online casinos, and how was that journey?
So Ed's the other co-director, so we both have our own stories, as everybody does, really. But it's much the same for everyone. There's forums that break down this information, and they're quite significant. I mean, there's over 25 significant forums, over 350,000 members of these forums. Jesus. And they're quite sophisticated in terms of the knowledge they provide, but there's also the community element in that they're shared knowledge, so you don't need 350,000 people to test the same thing to get a single result, right? So there's pooled expertise, which has kind of really accelerated the level of technical knowledge. So it was actually somebody that come to me and said, can I buy your identity off you? Someone I know, a good friend of mine. And I was like, well, he's offering me a few £100, but he's going to be making more than that. So I'm going to look into this. What's going on? So I did some research, and then something clever about these forums is they quite often have a free trial. So you can prove the concept yourself. They give you one free guide. It shows you how to do it, because it's quite, if it's something you're not exposed to before, it can be a little daunting, a little complicated. So they prove the concept to you, so it's part educational, and then you've earned more money than the subscription costs. And you're like, well, what have I got to lose? So they're very appealing in that sense. And so I started, exploring it. And then kind of I was earning to some degree more than I was through my business at the time. And the business got affected by the kind of interest rate change, the value of the pound change in 2016. It was a kind of import-export business.
Right.
I could have spent more energy on that, but I thought, at the time, there was so much more opportunity in, this little side project I had going. So I focused on that full time. Ed's much the same. He had a job, and decided I'm making more in the evening, like multiples of what I earn in a job in the evening. So, I'm just going to focus on this. And that's how it happens for most people. So there's no kind of like insightful story in that regard. It's quite dull. But what we started focusing on, there was kind of a regulatory change in the UK that reduced the value of a lot of offers and budget, and also, there wasn't so many new operators going live as well, because regulation tightened up a lot. So it had like a real impact on the value you were able to earn. So, our other speciality is multi-accounting. So the way around that is to just create lots and lots of accounts, lots of identities, right? But another way is to specialize in something. What was kind of straightforward processes, a lot of people move towards quite specific niches. So I'm talking like VIP abuse combined with bonus abuse, and kind of me and Ed, we had slightly different backgrounds when we met, and we met working against the industry. Ed focused a lot on sport, and casino content abuse, and I was kind of focused on bonus engine logic and casino advantage play. So we kind of pooled resources to kind of increase the value we can take per account. That's it really. That's kind of what brought us to build our knowledge, built our understanding, was trying all these little things. So there's some things that are out of the typical realms of people exploiting slots that are adopted more in kind of fraud communities. So things such as, can you create duplicate accounts as a way of scaling, undermine those processes? Card registration exploits that allow you to use this card on multiple sites, or have a card that can generate multiple sort of identities in a sense. Ways of exploiting systems that allow you to scale. So we kind of incorporated a lot of those sort of principles from the kind of fraud communities with bonus, typical bonus abuse strategies, and then all of these little kind of niche things that we'd been working on. So it kind of gave us quite a kind of rounded knowledge of most of the ways of exploiting casinos.
Yeah. So you mentioned Ozric, that the forums where the exploiters share information with each other. There's something like 350,000 members around these forums. That's absolutely massive. So this community is huge, in other words, and so they constantly share kind of information with each other. What is the let's say the possible exploits that they can all target together, kind of thing? Exactly, yeah. So something the community is very good at doing is pooling knowledge. So like I said, me and Ed shared notes. It benefited us both, and there's very much
kind of community element in that regard. And then the same in fraud as well. Someone specializes in one thing, another person specializes in another thing. No one has a full knowledge. It kind of relies on sharing your knowledge, sharing information to kind of better everyone. And that isn't always just on the mainstream forums. Actually, most of the time it's not, if you're onto something valuable, because you don't want everybody, using your approach.
Yeah.
What you do is you share that with friends, like tip off your mate, like, this is for the exploit you gave me, we paid a favor. So for the processes that are particularly valuable, they don't get talked about.
Okay. And like when you started out, you had to exploit casinos. How long did it take until you kind of started making money? Was it like a trial and error type of thing, or straight away from day one?
So sport advantage play, often called match betting. There's ways of approaching offers in a way that guarantees profit. So you pre-calculate the value prior to actually taking the value. So you predetermine that value. It's a bit different to a lot of casino abuse, which has an element of volatility. Like on average, you'll profit, but you've got to ride the swings. So there's a sort of natural progression from sport to casino for that reason.
Right.
You build a bank balance, and then you can go after the high volatile
and then you
stuff.
can take the volatility in the casino, because obviously it's ups and downs, let's say, even if you have a small advantage. That's what you want.
Exactly that. But I mean, 350,000 members in the forum, that just represents the individual people registering to the forums, right? The actual vast majority of abuse is multi-accounting. So that's things like, I mean, in most cases, people recruit identities. So it's a case of just using your brothers and sisters or cousins' identity to register an account. But quite often that, people don't stop there. We know of driving instructors that recruit their students. There's people that travel between university campuses recruiting students. There's people that stand outside job centres that, recruit from people that they know are vulnerable. And they're essentially buying someone's identity and, a card and access to KYC documents as a means of scaling. But I mean, that's one thing, and that really does scale. We've witnessed it. We can't quantify the size of all of these syndicates, but there's syndicates out there that use like 5,000 identities. There's some larger ones, but I don't have definitive numbers on them. So they're pretty massive, and that's just with permission. Then there's a whole world of using scraped or stolen data essentially as a means of scaling, which if people that understand how to exploit processes can use them and profit from them.
So I mean the scaling must be one of the major kind of goals for the exploiters. Like the more you scale, the more accounts you create in your network. Obviously, the more you can take advantage of each individual exploit. Fundamentally,
like the casino industry, I think maybe you could include sort of Forex as well, kind of. But the gambling industry is the only industry that gives you cash. Like when I was a kid working on my Windows 98 exploiting free sample sites and stuff, you've always got to sell the product. Like there's always accountability in terms of linking back to you. In that case, you've got to get the product, and what casino does is offer a cash incentive for exploiting their processes. And so the drive to abuse casinos, like the upside, is the ability to print money. If an offer has a positive value, and you can repeat that offer indefinitely, you can print money. So
indefinite money,
So I mean, it attracts some, say, brilliant minds. People that want to test if they can do this. People want to try. There is a drive to do that, and so we see all the time. You can see what people are doing, like trying to work the system or trying to. So essentially that's, what we do. We identify those holes and we try and fix them.
Yeah, it's a good point what you mentioned. Is the casino industry is the only industry that gives you money as an incentive to play, and like you say, that gives you the opportunity to exploit in order to print money. Like you say, it's quite interesting. So you started abusing the system in 2016. You said something along those lines.
It was before 2016. That's kind of when, I went all in.
That's when you went full time.
It was a side hobby for years before that, but that's when I kind of went head on with it.
Yeah, fair enough. I was going to say, I remember how rudimentary the fraud checks were in the beginning of my career. I remember when I was 18, I set up a account at Party Poker to play poker, and they gave you $50 with no terms and conditions. You could take the $50 and you could withdraw it straight away. And so, like you mentioned, like you just set up accounts for your parents, for your son, and then after a while, I remember they called me up. They said, we noticed that there's a lot of accounts under your name, and I was like, yeah, but I put it on my mother, my father, and but why are they on your name? I said, I guess they just put my name there. And they were like, okay, thank you, have a good day. You were able to withdraw different times.
That's what I mean. The incentive is to scale. It's always like you can earn thousands as an individual from doing all the welcome offers in the UK. But then you make money from the retention values as well going forward, but that kind of drops off after about 12 months. So the value starts deteriorating, and you look at ways of replicating that or scaling that. And it's they're rudimentary figures, but we can determine it's a multi-billion pound counter industry, and that's really kind of
multi-billion counter. That is insane money. How has the exploits changed since you started until now? Is it more difficult to exploit casino now versus 6 years ago?
It's a bit of a game of cat and mouse in that regard. So they've got better, but so has the other side. I would say, can't say too much because we've worked with so many platforms, but I would say they're kind of in parallel at the minute. The casino, they'll try and fix something, and the abusers will kind of find a way around it or find something new.
Yeah, interesting. And so again, you started off by exploiting the casinos, and also were very successful in that, and then somewhere down the line you decided that you are going to switch side to I don't know if it's in unexpected. There's white hat hackers who are the ethical hackers, and in this instance, I guess it's a white hat exploiter.
Sure.
And at what point did you decide to switch side, and what happened during that time?
Ed's a parent. I'm a parent, and we'd scaled, to a point where we're comfortable, and we had kind of stopped learning in terms of identifying exploits. We'd developed quite a lot of knowledge, and we weren't really enjoying that process anymore. It'd become work, essentially. I had employees in an office and running an operation, full time. But the problem is, you just spin slots all day, or it becomes work, and it becomes not pleasant, essentially. We like the problem solving element. It was never really about the money. It was about cheating. It's about the problem solving. So we now get that on the other side. We're approaching the same problems from the other side, and there's big limitations in the industry. So finding creative ways of solving these problems is kind of we got our energy back in that regard. But not only that, we're no longer locked in a room doing spinning slots all day. We can talk about it. We can
sit here and have a nice conversation about in other words. And so what was it like when you decided to switch over and kind of have your first conversation with an operator? How did that go about?
So There was one particular operator. I can't name names, unfortunately. But we're taking a significant amount of value off them in a short space of time. It was an exploit that allowed for both scaling with limited resources required, and also converting bonus to cash instantly. So it was like a powerful exploit, and we took a lot of money, and I think they were seeing that. So we got talking. I had a pseudonym, Ada Lovelace. So that's where it comes from, Ada Lovelace, the mathematician, but that was the
First
name I used.
female programmer.
Yeah. So I used that name. I was reading a story to my daughter, as a inspiring female role model around that time, and that's kind of where I picked the name from.
What a suitable bedtime story to your daughter as a computer expert. The story of Ada Lovelace.
And so I used that name because I didn't want this operator I was going to meet to know where I live. I was, I'd say, maybe a bit paranoid then, thinking, the gambling industry has a bad reputation, and especially if you're in a world of abusing them, you do things to justify it to yourself, right? So they're the enemy. So I used a pseudonym so I couldn't be tracked, and I went and met someone from an operator in London in a hotel lobby, and I was terrified. I got my mate to come with me. It was like the muscle. He sat on the table just away from me and stuff. I got there, and the person I met, they were more terrified than I was. So
really,
didn't
know what to expect.
No, they thought we were coming to get information out of them. So it transpired that we went on to work with them for a significant amount of time and make really significant savings. So word of mouth spread, it's a small industry. And so that was 2 years ago. Since then we've worked with 35 operators. So, with no marketing, just the value we've been able to save, is usually measured within the millions, so it's significant. The other thing was, going into the industry, we didn't want to move into prosecutable fraud. We didn't want that life for ourselves. We wanted to be legitimate. This opportunity come, and it worked out.
Yeah, it's funny. We got in touch first with Janetta, our previous project manager. It was about 2 years ago to talking about iGaming Next and maybe do something together there. And like you said, I'm assuming that having a resource like you working with the operators is just absolutely invaluable to them. Obviously, it's like this saying: if you can't beat them, then join them. And I think this operator that you work with in the first instance, obviously, instead of trying to hunt you down or whatever, just realize that this is fighting a losing battle. You have to work together in order to figure out how to stop these losses.
Absolutely, kudos to them for taking that chance on us, basically, because I don't know where I'd be now if that hadn't been the case. So we're grateful for it. Hopefully one day we can use their name and give them proper credit for it. But.
Yeah, exactly, for now. So what would you say is for the average operator, would you say that pretty much all operators are exploitable, or are there operators that do, without mentioning names of course, but do you think that is there some operators that do a much better job than others to avoid exploits, especially the larger ones?
Absolutely. So it's down to each individual operator. Of course, the size of their promotions is going to make a big difference, but there's many variables. How long you can take retention value from them is, also significant. So it doesn't matter if they don't have a welcome offer. If you can rinse them for a year on their retention offers, then, it's just as valuable, if not more. So there's many variables. It comes down to their individual ability to manage risk. But there are problems in the industry, departments are siloed. So, it's our opinion that, risk detection is, identified at all points of the player journey. So right from registration to payments to verification to gameplay, whatever that part of the journey, there's risk, there's metrics there to determine risk. And the problem at the moment is a lot of operators have very siloed departments, and really bonus abuse falls in the void of these silos, right? So, if you're trying to identify risk, you need the full puzzle picture to make an assessment, because there is correlations between the fraud element, the device tracking element, or the whatever IP correlations, and the gameplay. Because if there's a gameplay correlation, it reinforces our opinion. So the problem is it's all deconstructed at the moment, and so every operator's doing has their own ideas of how to manage this, but the reality is nobody has a full solution.
They'll manage part of the process, but there are gaps essentially.
So, as an example, there's an operator out there where, you can exploit their sportbook all day long, every day, and for more than a year, really, without any repercussions, just consistently taking value. Yet, if you go and play on their horse racing, then you're going to get identified. Like there's pockets of sophistication in this regard, in this area. And
you're only as strong as your weakest link in this game.
Exactly. Yeah. So every operator is a bit different. There are some that are very exploitable that you probably wouldn't suspect, and there's some that are really good that you probably wouldn't suspect either. But something I'd say is probably the smaller operators are a bit better.
Really?
The reason being is the impact for them is so much more significant. So if you imagine, there's only so many identities out there to be used for this form of abuse. In the UK, it's roughly around 1 million identities. So if a new operator goes live and their welcome offer gets circulated in these forums, they've got a huge amount of pre-existing identities there ready to just pounce on them. Like it has destroyed new operators just overnight, because wow, they can't manage that new entry into the market and the amount of abuse that exists within it. So whereas a big operator that's been around for a long time is diluted by all the genuine play. If they've got a big market share, it hurts them less. It's still a huge amount of money, but regulatory compliance and all of these things often trump looking inward at what might have been wrong from the times of moving fast and breaking things. So when they're good and ready to look inward, and we're here.
So can you mention like a couple or one or two of some of the more obvious exploits that are active today, for example?
Yeah,
the more common ones.
So I'll talk about some of the kind of abuse processes. I'm probably going to be a bit light on the topics just because, I don't want to be perceived as educating people on this kind of stuff. But casino advantage play is just mathematically optimizing the process of play. So, there's a lot of control the player actually has over, how they play. And that can determine the value of that promotion. So, there's kind of this idea that a single promotion has a single value, but the reality is every promotion has a variable value depending on how it's approached. So, it's a very popular form of abuse and very profitable historically. It's been more valuable than sport in terms of a kind of offer, like for like in terms of what you get in sport offers and casino offers. There's more people abusing sport, but the casino retains, has slightly higher value. And then there's the sport abuse as well, which is the same. It's just optimizing value. It's just taking every bit of value an operator gives you and optimizing it as much as you can to exploit as much out of that as possible. So, and then there's, all the different kinds of niches. So something we focused on a lot is bonus engine logic abuse, which it's essentially finding tiny nuances in how the bonus structure works. So that's things like, how the money moves, what happens if the bonus is cancelled while the money's in certain places, and all of these things. So when we're testing operator, we test thousands of different things to see if we can get something to break, and that's something me and Ed have sort of really specialised in. But then there's just consumption order abuse as well, which is just it's not finding bugs in the bonus engine, but it's finding bad design in a bonus engine. So
so the abuse comes both from the exploits come both from the operators and the game suppliers. So say it's not just the operators who are
sure. Yeah. So that's a good point. So the content as well. Obviously, you get bad content that's got problems that you can essentially make money just out of the content itself, which is something we identify quite often. But actually, we're never looking for that.
Okay.
It's just we've got a full-time guy that tests every new slot release, and so it's kind of he knows what he's looking for in that regard. So sometimes he comes across it, but our primary focus in terms of content, exploiting content, is actually where there's incompatibilities with operators' bonus engines, or how they format their bonuses. So I think Alex touched on it a little bit on the podcast with you recently. Essentially what it is storing value in a game that you later release as bonus, that you later release as cash, and it undermines the wagering process. So the player no longer needs to fully complete that wagering, and it massively increases the value. In many cases, they convert 90% of that value to cash, compared to maybe 20-30% if it was an advantage play process. So significantly higher value. But I mean, there's endless nuanced kind of exploits. We focus a lot on collusion as well. That can be a means of kind of that has several different ways it can be used to undermine what an operator is intending to happen. So yeah, that's it really. Just to add maybe on the exploitable slots, but they're becoming a more significant issue. It's not only converting bonus to cash, it's essentially a way of storing money without visibility. So it poses AML risks. There's affiliate risks as well. There's kind of abuse that utilizes this invisible value. But also VIP abuse as well. So this is a kind of another little niche section of abuse where you're essentially trying to harvest or, create VIP accounts. So you act like a good player until you get the VIP account. In many cases, operators, once you're segmented as a VIP, you kind of get locked in, or some do, some don't, but so you're in the system. Yeah. So then you take, if you can store value, it looks like you've lost, but you haven't lost, and then you can take the increased value when you get it. So there's many different little nuanced processes, that these different exploits have. Sometimes they kind of combine with each other to create new bizarre things that can happen, but I think that's a good summary of a few of the exploits. Like you said here in the beginning, I mean, it's a large amount of people who are, many of them are geniuses, obviously, they're figuring out the exploits. And I remember as well, a funny example from the early days of online gaming was the exploits were so rudimentary, and I remember the poker players, many of the poker pros figured out that you could earn money by currency fluctuations back in the day, for example. But it's such an easy thing, and it took a long time before the operators even caught up with that. The fact that you could move money from your main wallet in USD to your poker account in euro, and the operator were just updating these currencies once a day, right? So you knew how the currency was going to update. You quite often get odd little, I say fun, interesting exploits like that now and again. There's also the marketing kind of mess ups as well. There's been instances where they're giving 20 pence free spins or 20 cents free spins, and put an extra zero on by accident, and then you've got 20 euro free spins. And then there's all the, you're throwing in all these other processes. How can I hide that money? So it looks like I've lost it. And so you later release it over a period of time. And, how can I remove the wagering on it? Or what payment method can I use to get an instant withdrawal? Or,
Exactly, yeah. Because the operators mess up all the time. It's easy to mess up something like that, or send out an email with a promotion, and it's the requirements are, obviously it's a mistake, and obviously the operators, they notice it quick, but then the exploiters are trying to move that money or hide the money before the operator realizes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. And so now obviously you are developing like a plug and play product solution, so that obviously you're working with the operators and game studios as opposed on a one-to-one basis. You're only a couple of people, of course, but this plug and play solution is supposed to be of help to all operators in a automated way. Can you talk a little bit of this product and what it will do?
Yeah. To explain what it does, I'll just explain why it's needed. So we see 3 pillars in regards to risk management. There are some smaller ones on the periphery, but the 3 main requirements in terms of risk management is your verification products, your KYC products, and then gameplay risk analysis. So the sort of first line of defense of an operator is fraud products, and they're absolutely essential and needed, but there is a problem in that a large amount of abuse gets through, and the reason for that is because there's very good knowledge among the bonus abuse community on how to bypass these systems. The requirements can be very simple, and that's just a technological limitation. They do serve their purpose, but they're not a full solution, is the point I'm trying to make. Googling the name of some of these products, you can find pages and pages of guides on essentially how to undermine them. So then the next kind of line of defense, or sometimes it's next, sometimes it's last, whatever, is verification. So verifying the person is who they are. That's a big way of managing people using identities. So the problem with that is, I don't know if I can give details about cause of problem. They can be undermined. Let's just say that. So, there's a problem in that the data that some of these verification products use is publicly available data, and so it's possible to use data that guarantees verification. But with the fraud and verification processes, if you're using an identity with permission, there's not a lot they can do anyway. And as well, operators, they will take 100 bonus abusers over a false positive of 1 VIP player or 1 valuable player. So it leads to this dilution of how effective these products can be, because there is an area of false positives, and operators would much rather lean towards being safe than getting genuine customers caught up in the mix. So because of that, most multi-accounters, make it through the system. But really, one true thing is every bonus abuser is looking to optimize value. It's a universal truth. So that's where gameplay analysis is really important. And currently, there isn't a product on the market that you can use for this. And like I said before, operators have all these limitations in regards to implementing it themselves, whether that's knowledge gaps or data science or development resources or whatever that may be. So that's essentially what we want to achieve. It's called the Gameplay Risk Engine, or the GRE, following suit with AML, KYC, the 3-letter acronyms, because that's what it is. It's this new category, right? we want to work with, the other key risk identifiers. So it's not only to fill this, missing pillar, it's also to connect them. So we want to be a platform, that allows someone to give a single view of all the risks associated with an individual player, each individual player. But we want every department using that, because like I say, it's like every department it affects, like right through from, there's fraud, there's marketing, there's payments, there's even through to the odds makers and the who's choosing the content. Like all of these, there's value to be taken for almost every department in this regard, having this full risk profile of a player. So that's essentially it, really.
Yeah, and like so out of the multi-billion euro that gets exploited over and over, how much do you expect this product to save?
So that's really down to the operator. So what we want to do is provide visibility, like tools. So currently the metrics used to determine if a player is abusive aren't great. So it's looking at deposits and withdrawals and incentivized play versus non-incentivized play. What we want to do is two things. We want to analyze behaviors. So that's talking about like sequence of events that highlight abuse. So in the case of exploitable slots, we can create clear. We understand what behaviors are intrinsic to exploiting a slot, so we can define that, and we can automate the detection of that kind of risk. That's something that's kind of behavioral. What we're also doing is mathematical modeling. So this is something that the bonus abusers do. They're looking to optimize the value. They will do that mathematically. They will use simulators, they'll use calculators. These all tools that are out there. Essentially we're reverse engineering that. So for every player, regardless of whether they've won or lost, we can determine their true value. So their actual value based on how they've played, how they've chosen to interact with the operator, how they've how they've played, what kind of strategy they've chosen, what kind of offers they're taking, maybe they use a bit of dilution to look like a genuine player, but it'll always be like a small margin. So we'll be able to see all of that. We'll be able to see, this player might have won, 10,000 euros, but, the reality is if they continue playing, they will cost you 20,000 euros in the long term. So this is, what we hope to achieve and reduce the time it takes to identify this kind of abuse, like dramatically. Like I was saying earlier, some operators, it takes 12 months for them to understand what's going on, and really it's about not having the right metrics, and that's really what we want to provide. Yeah,
exactly, to reduce the time it takes to identify the abuse, in other words.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when do you expect to have the product to market?
So we don't have a set date yet, so this is quite early, but we're hoping early next year we'll have made good progress. So we're planning all the events to in anticipation, but we're working with a good team. So we've partnered with a CRM platform, Fast Track, and we're leaning on their kind of development resources, and their existing insight that they have from developing their own platform. And that partnership's quite natural as well, because the data we require, which is really granular, kind of lives natively on their system already. They've already gone through the trouble of building an API layer that collects all the good stuff. So in terms of gameplay anyway. So we hope it's not too long, but I can't give a definitive timeline at this point.
No, we're looking forward. Our good friends as well, Fast Track with Simon and Chris, of course, and you mentioned here as well, Ozric, that you'll be at SBC Barcelona, and then obviously a Game Next in October as well. So for those operators and potential partners that want to meet you, those are good opportunities as well. Absolutely. I suppose to reach out. Yeah, that's cool. Also, Ozric, before we end today, I have I'm just curious in general to slide a little bit off topic here, and looking at the wider IT security. Something that interested me that came to light last year was the SolarWinds hacks. And it exposed the fact that every organization is just very vulnerable to hacks, of course. And this, in a nutshell, the SolarWinds hacks was a state-sponsored hack, which the extent of which is unknown, I guess, still. But more or less, all of the biggest organizations in the US, including government institutions, were affected, I believe. And again, it's unknown to what extent they have been hacked, these organizations. So I have just heard that there's so many ways to compromise systems now. I mean, there was another hack where a company got compromised by the thermostat in the aquarium in the office. That was connected to the Wi-Fi and then led into the IT systems. So it begs the question a bit, like, do you think that like, what is the future of IT security? Like, is the future to take system offline, off the cloud? Is the cloud dead, for example, or how, what do you see as the future of IT security with the amount of hacks that is happening?
Honestly, it's probably not something I've really concerned myself with or given too much thought about.
Sorry to put you on the spot here.
No. I mean, like,
it's not often you have someone.
I understand the risk, but I don't really have a solution in that regard.
Yeah.
Especially with the considerations regarding quantum computing and everything that's potentially to come. I don't know the answer to that. I have absolutely no idea.
All right, fair enough. I totally put you on the spot with that. I wanted to see if there was something that was interesting. But I mean, other than that, Ozric, like, it's been super interesting and informative. To I know this is the first time we kind of talk about this publicly and things. So I really appreciate that in general for coming on, and I'll be really happy to follow up at some point, and obviously happy to see at iGaming Next in October and so on. Is there any final words on your end as well?
Not really. Thanks for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, awesome. Well, take care, Ozric, and we'll see you again in the future.
Cheers.
Thank you. Awesome.